Check, check, check. Good morning, everyone. My name is Renaissance, and I'm with Whose Streets, Our Streets, who has endorsed the shutdown of the King County jails. I'm also with 350 Seattle, who has also endorsed the shutdown of King County jails. Yeah, you can make some noise for that.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Aretha Basu. I've organized in the past with No New Youth Jail, Block the Bunker, and Decrim Seattle. Thank you all for being here this morning.
Kenneth Title.
Dustin Rand.
Billy Vernal Sterling.
Liana Mathis.
Eric Hernandez Mendoza.
Keith Darnell Dengal.
Damian Ortega.
LeBroy Brandt.
Michael Rowland. In July 2020, King County Executive Dow Constantine pledged to close the King County Jail. The names we just read are community members who have died in the jail since then.
We are here today because they are not. We are here because last April, one of those deaths was Michael Rowland. 63 years old, he was a Black, disabled, unhoused, and was killed within half an hour of arriving at the jail. Earlier that night, SPD arrested Mr. Rowland for entering a downtown hotel and demanding food. When SPD arrived, Mr. Rowland was clearly in the midst of a mental health crisis. Instead of offering care, SPD knelt on Mr. Rowland and arrested him. Instead of transporting him to somewhere where he could receive the meal he sought, they loaded him into an ambulance, covering his face in a spit hood. Once at the jail, guards put him on his stomach, knelt on his back to force a jail uniform on his body. Jail guards used the same restraint Derek Chauvin used on George Floyd. Within minutes, Michael Rowland was dead. For us, Michael Rowland's murder was the last straw. We are here today because Mr. Rowland is gone. We are here today to demand a county where Mr. Rowland and everyone who has died from being locked up in this jail would still be with us here today.
We are here to collect on Dow Constantine's promise to close this deadly jail. This morning, we delivered notice to city and county leaders that over 50 community groups are demanding that this jail be shut down. We demand that the city and county officials immediately begin emptying the jail. 3 steps these leaders can start taking today to empty the jail include: stop jailing all people experiencing mental health crises and release those currently jailed. Prohibit police from seeking jail administration for those experiencing mental health crises. And stop imposing bail, which only functions to hold poor people in this deadly facility. We inform county and city officials that we expect immediate action that matches this crisis. We emailed the elected officials. We know we have power to meet these demands. We have asked that they provide a public response within 30 days and that they share their action plan to address these demands. This morning, you will hear today from speakers representing different sectors of our community. They will share different insights, but they all agree with the bottom line: the King County Jail has got to go. Our first speaker is Anita. Speaking on behalf of the Department of Public Defense, to give a sense of who is in the jail, explain that most people there are there because they are poor, most are there pre-trial, and are there because they can't pay bail.
Hi, my name is Anita, and I am the director of the King County Department of Public Defense. My office represents most of the people who are incarcerated in the King County Jail. Many of those incarcerated in the jail are suffering from significant mental illness. I hear from attorneys, mitigation specialists, and other members of my office every day about how our clients are suffering, how they're failing to get adequate medication while incarcerated or at the time of their release. I hear about how the jail staffing crisis results in our clients languishing in their cells for 23 hours a day. And the staffing problems mean that they can't meet with their attorneys because there aren't staff to bring the clients to see their attorneys. Many of the people we represent have recently been found incompetent, which means that a judge has found that a person is so profoundly mentally ill that they cannot understand the charges against them. Despite recent and sometimes repeated findings of incompetence, the police persist in arresting them and booking them into jail, and prosecutors charge them. The person will remain incarcerated, often for months, and then the court once again finds them incompetent and releases them. SPD recently callously tweeted about one such individual. In January of 2023, they tweeted that they had arrested a quote-unquote bathtub burglar, an individual who had entered someone's house and was found fully clothed, lying in a bathtub full of water. They booked that person into jail. A quick search of records shows that that same individual had been released from jail only a few months earlier. He had been found incompetent to face the charges on which he was booked. He'd been sent to Western State Hospital, where he was medicated and then became competent enough to plead guilty, and then was dumped back onto the streets with no medications or support. As a federal court based in Seattle noted, jails are not hospitals. They are not designed as therapeutic environments. Punitive settings and isolation for 23 hours a day exacerbates mental illness and increases the likelihood that the individual will never recover. About 95% of the people incarcerated at the King County Jail are there because they are too poor to post bail. More than 38% of those incarcerated are Black, which is 5 times the population of King County that is Black, 7%. We must stop fueling the racist carceral system. We must stop caging those who are too poor to pay their bail and those who are too mentally ill to even understand the charges. We must do better.
Thank you so much, Anita. Thank you for all you do. Our next speaker is Bria. Bria is a housing manager with Lavender Rights Project, an organization that elevates the power, autonomy, and leadership of Black, intersex, and gender diverse community members through intersectional legal services and social services.
Good morning. On March 20th, 2022, Damian Ortega, a 25-year-old trans person, was found unresponsive at the King County Jail. Before Damian was jailed, Damian made numerous attempts to access resources for survival and mental health. After Damian was found unresponsive in a cell at King County Jail, Damian was transported to Harborview Medical Center. While at Harborview, the court ordered Damian's release, and a day later, Damian died. Damian is not the first and certainly won't be the last whose life ends too soon due to the injustices of a system that was broken to begin with. Jails are not and can never be a safe place for trans people, but the problem starts even before the jail. Seattle Municipal Court has jurisdiction over misdemeanor adjudications that are charged in Seattle. In Damian's case, it was the Seattle Police Department, Seattle City Attorneys, the Seattle judges that led Damian to being booked at King County Jail, despite his clear and serious mental health and medical needs. What happened to Damian is not an aberration. What happened to me and so many of us is a part of a pattern of hostile, demeaning, and heartless treatment of trans and gender diverse community members, Black, Native, and people of color, and poor and the houseless community members. Over 90% of individuals adjudicated in Seattle Municipal Court are living in poverty. Many are houseless. This is a court system that is built on prosecuting and adjudicating individuals for crimes of poverty, for actions folks would most likely not participate in if their needs were being met. We can no longer allow our most vulnerable community members who are living in crisis to be put in cages without challenging those making the decisions. That is why I'm here today to say enough is enough. King County Jail must go.
I got it here. I think we're good. Thank you, Bria. It's good for us. Yeah, we twisted up the schedule. Next, we'll be hearing from Allison Essinger, Executive Director of Seattle-King County Coalition on Homelessness.
Good morning. My name is Allison Eisinger, and I'm here on behalf of the Seattle-King County Coalition on Homelessness. Our coalition exists to challenge systemic causes of homelessness and advocate for housing justice. Jailing members of our community for being too poor to have homes, what we refer to as being homeless in public, is a systemic cause of homelessness. Jailing people for being too poor or homeless, or in the case of Mr. Michael Rowland, for being hungry in public, jailing people who are in mental crisis instead of taking them to crisis care centers, not only contributes to homelessness, it perpetuates it. It perpetuates the racial inequities in who becomes homeless and who is homeless for far too long. Black and brown and Indigenous and trans people in particular. Across our region, we see more and more elected officials passing and trying to pass laws that literally make it a crime to exist. To be homeless, to be in a park with the intention of sleeping, to erect a tent with more than 2 sides, to be in possession of a shopping cart. Some local jurisdictions insist that they won't enforce these laws. They just need them on the books to threaten people, so they move on to a neighboring jurisdiction. There's only one place this ends, and that is jail. Jail is not a therapeutic environment. People die in our jail. And when people get out, they certainly don't have an easier time finding or affording a place to live. This vicious and immoral cycle actively undermines all the good and effective work to end homelessness. We do not currently have enough homes or shelter for people who need and want it. Some 40,000 King County residents or more will experience homelessness in this year. The rate at which people experiencing homelessness die in our community exceeds that of any other group. Our behavioral health care system is in crisis, and the state bears great responsibility for that. But while the state and Seattle and King County say that they are working to change these things, and they are, as are all of us, we call on them to take these 3 specific steps with urgency. This is a crisis. We understand that lasting solutions take time. This is a crisis now. This is harm reduction. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Allison. Next, we will be hearing from Ruba Ayub, an organizer with Who Streets, Our Streets, and co-founder of Youth Voices for Justice and Love is Transformative.
Thank you. In the summer of 2020, when Executive Constantine pledged to close the King County Jail, that's not the only promise he made. On that day, he also announced that the youth jail would be emptied by 2025. However, it's been 3 years, and our community members are still getting locked up and dying in adult jails, and young people continue to be thrown in these inhumane cages. Young people and children who end up in jails are statistically more likely to end up back in adult jails and in prison simply by setting foot in the youth jail. This is because of the school to prison pipeline, where children, especially black and brown kids, are pushed out of schools and into the criminal justice system. Instead of having programs at schools to help address accountability, children are more likely to be expelled, suspended, and even arrested at schools. We also end up in jails for being poor and because of our skin color and the type of neighborhood we're from. Growing up, I, along with many of my friends, got trapped into this pipeline. I was only 16 years old when one of the officers put his knee on my neck and the other one on my back. After this incident, I was suspended. Meanwhile, the officer continued to be at my school and got promoted full-time. A lot of my friends and family members have been killed by the police and have been incarcerated in these jails. A year ago, my friend's brother, trigger warning, committed suicide after being released from jail. I have many other stories to share, but they all point to one fact, and that's black and brown lives don't matter in this country. Once you go into these punitive facilities, it fucks you up mentally. You leave these places with PTSD, anger issues, and other mental illnesses. Not only that, once you have a record or have been incarcerated, it's hard to find employment and housing and other opportunities, and many people end up on the streets and turn to things that they don't even want to do. Another pipeline I want to bring awareness to that we don't really talk much about is the abuse to prison pipeline, in which survivors of domestic violence, mostly women, queer, trans women, trans men, are criminalized and incarcerated due to their experiences of abuse. Instead of having support services, survivors of violence escaping abusive situations are incarcerated in jails and prisons that continue to traumatize and further the fucking abuse. It is clear that jails and prisons do not keep us safe or meet our needs or even deter crimes or transform lives. It literally continues to perpetuate cycles of harm and violence because that's what it's designed to do. Therefore, we need to dismantle these systemic racist injustices by shutting down jails, prisons, and invest in transformative justice, non-punitive programs, social services, youth program, and community resources. We need resources that can help our youth and survivors of violence heal from traumas and rebuild our lives. We need to put an end to these punitive jails that take our loved ones, community members, and our money, our tax dollars. Literally, we're paying for this shit. We need to shut it down. These white supremacist, punitive, genocidal establishments which harm and kill people must be shut down. We cannot stand by and allow our children, our community members, our families to end up in these harmful institutions. We must hold our elected officials accountable and demand that they fulfill their promises to close the King County Jail, the youth jail, and end the school to prison and abuse to prison pipeline immediately. And all other pipelines that target marginalized identities on purpose. It's time. It's time for action and no more empty promises. We won't stop till there's no justice. We won't stop till this country stops killing people. No justice, no peace.
Thank you, Ruba. And next, we'd like to have Attorney Sade Smith come to the stage and will be our final speaker for today.
Here we go. Can y'all hear me? Okay. All right. Ruba, that was amazing. I don't really think that I need to say much more, but the mayor and the county executives dictate the types of charges people are locked up for. Cops use those dictates to target our most vulnerable community members and throw them in the King County Jail. Prosecutors ask for bail, and the courts order it. The jail's violence is reinforced by every level of local government. When we attorneys tell the courts about the conditions in the jail, the extreme number of assaults and uses of force, lack of drinkable water, the slave labor, judges refuse to hold the city, state, and prosecutors in jail accountable. Judges use our communities for headlines. Instead of doing what's right by refusing to send people to the death trap, they keep the poor locked up. They care about tough on crime, election policies, and politics instead of saving lives. Instead of pushing back against the prosecutors' unreasonable and ridiculous demands. In court, judges lecture community members about allegations but are absolutely silent about those same community members when they're murdered. Judges use every excuse to justify anti-Black, anti-trans, and anti-Indigenous violence. Those genocidal policies continue. They don't care about the suicide rate being 8 times the national average, or that the jail is 40% Black when the population is only 6% Black, or that 50% of the youth are Black. They don't care that Indigenous and trans community members are the highest at risk. Every judge and prosecutor who continues to seek and set bail is responsible for what happens to the people locked up. They ignore the suicide rate. They ignore previously contaminated water. They ignore the understaffing. They ignore the fact that people are locked up nearly 24 hours a day. They ignore the horrible medical response and care. They ignore the filthy and freezing conditions. They ignore the use of slave labor. They ignore the genocide. They ignore the death. Every single one of the prosecutors and judges know exactly what's happening in the jail, just like every politician and every cop. They choose to lock people up. Prosecutors choose to seek bail, and judges choose to punish people for being poor. They know the risk and continue to fill the jail. In the last year alone, 6 people died. Countless more have been assaulted and even more traumatized. The cruelty of the courts is unmatched. Just a couple weeks ago, Seattle Municipal Court Judge Lynch set a $7,500 bail on a black man who couldn't even walk or stand without help, without assistance. He suffers from cancer and recurring kidney issues. The jail can't possibly provide care to him. The judges know that, yet they still set bail that people can't afford. They don't care if we die. They'd rather spend $200 a day per person, a total of $73,000 a year, to lock us up, instead of to keep us safe and invest in our futures. Last year, a man was nearly beaten to death inside the jail. He was almost blinded as well. Guards and medical staff were slow to respond. He was found unconscious in his cell, and still they let this jail stay. Even when attorneys bring letters from the jail administration advising judges, the jail simply can't provide the care that's needed. King County judges still order that bail. We've had 150 years of mass incarceration and policing. In that time, we've seen thousands of reforms. There are already cameras in many parts of the jail. It changes nothing. After 2020, in the uprising, 40 states enacted hundreds of reform laws about policing. Yet in 2022, it was the deadliest year for police brutality and police murders. The system's foundation is white supremacy and death. It has no other form. The answer isn't more money, more staffing, or changes in the law. We've done that. It doesn't work. It never will. The only answer is shutting it down.
Thank you so much, Sade. Thank you so much to all of our speakers. Thank you so much to all of our community members who have come out this morning. Our message is clear. Our mission is clear. We are here to say, shut down KCJ! Say,
Shut down KCJ!
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 Shut down KCJ! Remember, we're here to hold Dow Constantine accountable to the promises that were made in 2020 to shut down a King County jail, and those promises have not been honored yet, and we are here to make sure that that happens.